nothing but faith. There's things far too great that I want to accomplish. I'm hoping 25 hours a day, but something good works out, and I'm just like, dang. Think everything's gonna be okay. Yeah, I'm like, dang. Think you might just know the way. I'm like, dang.
Welcome to Dang.
Dang! Today's a very special day. Just kidding. Today's a regular day.
It's a special day because we're recording Dang.
That's right. It's a special day because we're recording Dang. Exactly.
And
Today was quite a morning. We woke up and the dog had pooped all over the kennel.
Oh, yeah.
She had the runs. It was so sad and so
You
much
had to remind
work.
me of that.
Yes. I got up early this morning and cleaned it up, and I did not want to. I was hoping I got it all out, but I could still smell it a little bit, so I tried everything to get rid of it. It was gross. It was totally gross. The whole time I'm cleaning, I was like...
You woke me
trying to
up
clean it
telling me it was all clean, but then I came out and was like, it is not all clean.
Well, it was clean to my best ability.
I think I spent another 45 minutes cleaning it.
I'm sorry.
It was like
It
dried
happens.
onto the walls and
I know,
sides.
and Adelie would say, and that's why I don't like dogs.
Ooh.
Okay, so what are we going to talk about today?
I think we decided today was going to be a little bit of diving into addiction.
Yes,
right?
we are going to dive into addiction, yes.
So, do you want me to ask you questions?
Sure, ask me questions. What would you like to
All
know?
right.
If anyone doesn't
So-
know, I have 31 years of sobriety in the program. Okay, go ahead.
And I actually think that I myself have battled a little bit of addiction. Shopping addiction, actually. And
Oh,
I'm
yes,
being
that is addiction.
completely serious.
No, it's the same thing.
So I think that there's some things related to this that I think almost everybody will be able to relate to a little bit.
Yes.
And it's just a matter of how deep people get into the addiction before they realize and take steps to be able to protect themselves from it.
Yes.
Okay, so some of the common questions people have about addiction are what causes it?
Well, what causes addiction for me? Can't speak for everyone else, but I can speak from what I've worked on and what I found out from the people that I've worked with. Addiction is you're trying to escape how you're feeling. Addiction is, what I always tell people is, when you get on drugs or something, that's not the, that is the answer for a symptom that you're trying to escape how you're feeling.
Right.
You're trying to cover up all your feelings, the way you feel, and you don't know how to identify your feelings, but you know you feel bad, so you think that drugs are going to make you feel better, and temporarily it does.
Yeah.
But then it turns on you, and you become addicted, and then you start ruining everything else around you.
Yeah, when I looked up like the actual scientific definitions
Yeah.
of it, they were talking about how it's when someone tries a substance or behavior seeking pleasure or relief
That's
from
right.
stress or pain.
Yes.
Which is exactly what you're describing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so for me, mine was, as a child being molested, having the police harass me constantly, going through a lot of racism. So I was trying to couldn't identify who I was or what I was, so I was trying to cover it up. And then having a father who also was alcoholic. So trying to change all that, I was trying to escape those feelings, But also the interesting part about it is, growing up in the era that I grew up in, they didn't really explain to you why to stay away from drugs. They didn't explain that. They just said, don't do drugs. Why not? Because we said not to. That's all we really heard. An explanation of it, what I've given my kids, which is a great deal, I've given them an explanation of why not to do it. This is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen to you. And I think that's why sometimes I get upset when people try to tell me how I'm feeling, because I spent so much time to understand my feelings and to know what I'm feeling. And then when someone tells me, oh, well, you're feeling this, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm feeling this. And I have to fight for that because I know what I'm actually feeling today. I didn't know when I first started.
Yeah, and actually I think it's something that we kind of don't always talk about or pay attention to, that as people, we have to get to know ourselves.
Yes,
We have to get to know our bodies, our
Yes.
functions. I remember, because it's kind of a weird example, but I think it illustrates the point, is I got married quite young. I was only 19 when I was first married. And I remember when I was researching like forms of birth control, people talking about a type of birth control where you would track like your body's symptoms and your cycle, and that you would just not have sex on those weeks when you were ovulating, that you knew based on this cycle. And I remember thinking, there is no way I would feel confident enough in just managing how I felt inside my body to be able to be like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Like it was such a weird idea to me that I was like, people would be able to know that. Like there's really people that would be so in tune with their body that they would feel confident that they, but now fast forward, 30 years or 20 years or whatever it's been. And I kind of get it because I have learned what my body feels like, what different things mean and all that kind of, but it is a learning curve. And I don't even think that we're prepared sometimes or realize that's an effort that we have to make to learn what things feel like to us in our own bodies.
A lot of people are being told how they feel. You're not learning for yourself how you feel.
Right.
It's just like, I tell kids, when Spencer and them were younger, okay, it's okay to cry if something hurts your feelings. It's okay to cry if you're feeling bad about something, but it's not okay to cry if you're not getting what you want. You can't cry because that's not a way to cry. That's just being bratty if you cry because you're not getting what you want. But it's different if something bothers you or hurts you. That's okay to cry.
Right, and I think the point I'm just trying to make is that I totally agree with you about the feelings, but then it's expanded to even just. It's like these bodies have sensors and things that we have to get used to what they mean.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that you don't realize that you're having to do that. Like, I think you kind of enter adulthood. I don't know. It's like a training course of like, okay, you might feel this or you might feel that. And we get bombarded a lot now with messaging on like social media, Instagram or the likes of people telling us. And I think in some ways it's good because we are learning a lot more about mental health or also just the way we feel as people and all that. Like, I think there's more messaging out there, but one of the things I've noticed is that when you start paying attention or liking or interacting with certain types of posts, you get fed a lot more of that.
Yes, you do, yeah.
And sometimes I think, especially for young children or people that are still not very experienced in the world, I feel like they're going to just take this information and just trust it and believe it, and it won't necessarily jive with their own experience.
Yes, and that's why it's like sometimes you tell people you have to watch how you communicate to somebody because you're going to say something that may offend them and you may get punched in the nose because people don't understand. You have to see, when I meet people, I feel people out first, and like with guys, we know how far we can go. You know what you can say. If you say something, if you challenge a male, you're going to end up in a fight. And so we have to say things a little more respectful, and be like, okay, or if we say something forceful, we have to stand behind what we feel. I think a lot of times people don't understand that to be in tune with yourself emotionally, also it's the same way as how you speak to someone. Like, you can't, because someone treats you bad, you can't take it out on someone else because it's not a right way to go. When I wasn't in tune with my feelings, I would take in a lot, and then I would explode into something big. And that's when I realized that I wasn't being fair, not only to myself or the other person. That's why when someone hurts me now, I will tell them right away, hey, I'm telling you now, saying this can, it's going to cause another reaction. Please don't treat me like that.
So for you, the addiction started because you were trying to seek relief. And I think for a lot of people, seeking relief from emotions and feelings
of how I felt about
that
myself,
you just couldn't escape otherwise.
And how I felt about myself. All the other emotions made me feel bad about myself. The things that happened to me by people made me feel worse about myself. And I think as kids, we want to be, we want to feel special. We want to be special. When you have a father who is not there for you, is not treating you well, you look to other ways to fulfill that. And that is the dangerous part about women. They have to be careful. When they have a bad father, they'll be seeking someone else to take that role. And that's okay if the person's in a position that's a good person, but you don't want to try to find it in a worse way.
Yeah, that's actually, we're talking about addiction here, but that's a big way where people end up in abusive relationships, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a segue. But I think that just to sum that up is that when people addiction often begins when people are dealing with emotions or feelings or circumstances that are painful, and they're looking to generate some positive, good feelings, and they just have run out of options. That's why some people develop healthy addictions, quote unquote, right? Like, I don't think any addiction particularly is healthy, but they will maybe embrace a behavior that's not necessarily harming them.
It may not be harming them, but it's still not good for you.
It's still not good for you to be addicted, right?
Okay, like
Exercise.
If you exercise every single day, 50 times a day, that's going to obviously be bad on your body, not good for you, not healthy for you. If you eat too much chocolate or too much of this, that's not going to be good for you. It's not. I truly believe there is not a healthy addiction. I think you have to do everything in moderation, and you'll be okay. If you keep your life in moderation, you'll be okay.
So I will disagree with you a little bit there, because I agree that all addiction is a problem that needs to be addressed. But I think that to get into recovery, sometimes I think some people, it's a trade-off of trading in, an addiction that is harming me for something that's maybe a little bit better for me.
But it's still, in our program, you don't want to do that. Because then you're not curing what you have, or you're not making it better. You're just
I'm just proposing that I don't think there's any recovering addict or somebody in recovery I know that's not using some sort of something to be kind of their
if I played video games,
crutch, I guess.
If I played video games as much as I did drugs, 24/7, 7 hours a day.
Honey, I'm not even pointing at you specifically.
No.
I'm just saying.
If I did that, what would I be harming? And that's not a harmful addiction, but what would I be harming? My family. I'd be harming, not spending time with my wife, not spending time with my kids. So that's why everything has to be done in moderation.
Right, and
if you're a workaholic, if you work too much, 24/7, you're giving up the ability to be with your family. Your kids are not going to see you. You're not going to be able to be around your kids. So there's not really
I guess you're right. Okay, I can see what you're saying. Yeah. So it's that we're keeping it out of the addictive territory because you put controls on it.
Yes.
And that was something I'd read a book once, because my ex-husband actually had addiction as well. It was a little bit different, but I read and studied a lot about addiction. It's kind of how I identified, and was seeking help for my own shopping addiction. I think, honestly, when people there's such a stigma around the word addiction or being an addict. Yeah. But honestly, I think if you interviewed every person, like if we were to go grab like 50 adults from right here and interview them all, I think you'd find one way or another that they have dealt with this idea of becoming compulsive about something.
Well,
and especially if they've dealt with difficult things, which who hasn't, right? Yeah. Like who's had a life that's been just easy breezy and hasn't had anything difficult,
but here's
right?
The thing. If you hadn't read about my addiction, you wouldn't know. You can't look at me and think that I have had an addiction quality.
Right, because you're no longer, you're in recovery, which that's what I was getting to, is that the way that you short circuit and get out of addiction is by controlling it, right? Addiction, by very definition, means that you no longer have control. If you are an addict, you are using out of a compulsion that you no longer have agency over. Like it's not a question. Yes. It's not a matter of yes or no. You have to be part of that treatment. Part of the recovery process is kind of letting go and regaining a sense of control over your life by starting to take those steps in recovery, right?
Well, it's starting to do healthy things that are not going to damage you emotionally, spiritually. It's like if I was running out sleeping with 5,000, if I wasn't married and I'm sleeping with 5,000 women, that's not healthy. You know why it's not healthy? Because I can end up with AIDS, I can end up with this, that, I can end up with a bunch of kids. So that's not a healthy addiction. But healthy addictions, which means that I don't mean healthy addictions, but healthy when you're taking care of your life, and you're doing your life right when you're in recovery, you're doing things within moderation. Like, I'm doing this, but it's moderation.
Absolutely.
I'm doing this, but it's moderation.
Yeah, because you're putting control. You're exercising boundaries.
Yes, it's boundaries.
So I have a friend who her husband was battling pornography addiction. And one of the things that we had talked about as an approach, and I'm not sure, I haven't kept up with the situation. It's obviously something that people don't like to talk about, publicly or anything like that. But one of the approaches was to limit it to 15 minutes a day. Like there's so much shame wrapped up, especially within like my church's culture.
There's a lot in America. There's so much shame in sex even with your wife. It's so much shame in that America's put on it. You could do it, but okay, but you can't do this, can't do that. And that's what has damaged us. If you go to Europe, it's not like that.
Well, did you know that shame being attached to pornography is part of what makes it so addictive?
Probably.
That it actually it keeps it in that addiction cycle, because the addiction cycle is also known as the shame cycle.
Yes.
So because there's so much shame attached to it, it actually creates more of a problem.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we were talking about is that said, And their husband was having a very difficult time using this approach, which I found so ironic. And it is just because addiction is hard to control. But it was like, if you will do it for 15 minutes a day and then stop, and use that as the stepping stone, it would work because you're exercising control over the addiction. You are starting to control it. And that's when it starts losing its power. Because that's what you're talking about, the moderation. And he was resistant because he was like, no, it's bad. And I need to just stop using it altogether. It's like, yeah, you're right. I see why you want to stop using it, but seeing that as a step. And I don't
feel that you can control it. You can control it. I feel that you have to keep away from it and do the things to keep you away from it, to prevent yourself from having to be involved in it. And then once you have, what I always say is, once you have enough stuff away from it, and you've been away from it long enough, it's easier not to control it, but it's easier to keep yourself on a healthy path.
But you don't think that it would be helpful as that first step to put control into your life?
No, I'll tell you why. If
you don't think that would work?
If I was doing 10 grams of cocaine a week and I limit it to 1 gram a week, that's still going to take me out.
But I'm not talking about cocaine.
I know,
with pornography, do you think that would work for pornography?
I think that you have to cut it out and you have to find something healthier to do.
Oh, okay. Just replace it altogether.
You have to replace it, because if you don't, it's not. First of all, what you see in porn is not how sex really is. It's not that.
Absolutely.
They're not doing it for 12 hours. Then that just doesn't take place. I think that when you look at the reality of it, and you have to look at what sex is all about in those things. You're seeing these things, and those women come from broken homes. They have emotional, a lot of stuff that goes along with those porn films, things that happen. And I think that when you replace it with something better, something that's healthy and not, shameful to not only yourself, but just other people, if they catch you seeing it or watching it, it helps you move further away from it. Once you get further away from it, then that's when the control comes in, where you can control things that are happening in your life.
So I'm not convinced that it wouldn't work for pornography, but I'm not sure, because those sort of incremental controls is how I managed my shopping addiction. Okay. So maybe, I'm not sure. I'm not a scientist.
But maybe there's different controls for different ones.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. And that's why I'm like, with pornography, we're talking about people that will go get lost for hours down the rabbit hole. And if you were to set a timer and say, I'm going to use for 15 minutes, it's sort of like giving yourself a nicotine patch. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's giving a little bit, but you're starting to control it and then take it away and say no. Okay. So that's why I think it would work. But with me for shopping, what I ended up having to do was give myself a budget rather than feeling bad about every purchase that I made, right? And maybe it's because shopping is sort of something that you have to do, right? Like we have to buy things for groceries and things like that. So by restricting myself to a certain amount was kind of like the gateway to getting myself in control. And then, but you're right in some ways, in that if I find myself becoming overwhelmed, I still use this tactic today, like Target. I love Target so much, but it is one of the places where I've had to do this a couple times. If I get to a point where I am, things are just piling into my cart and I cannot choose, I cannot pick between them because I just want it all, I will just walk away. I will grab my purse from the cart and I will just walk away and leave the cart standing there. And I'm sure that's not wonderful for the Target employees that have to put the stuff back. But that's been, so there's, I think you're right in some ways of like, you have to just at some point just shut it off altogether. Yeah. But I've also had a lot of really good success with framing it by giving myself a budget or a specific amount that I'm allowed to buy, like one thing or something like that. And sometimes I'll find I don't even spend the budget, or I don't even buy that one thing. But by giving myself that permission and having that control over it, it somehow alleviates it.
Well, I can tell you the statistics of it. This place that I went through, I think we had 5,000 people. I'm the only one who stayed sober. That's how, because it's a tough statistic, but also I think that you can use these statistics in any ways. Just like, people who are addicted to eating too much chocolate, they get too big or they get unhealthy. It's tough to walk away, but what recovery does is teach you how to live your life in a positive way. Teach you how to understand your emotions. Teach you how to understand your feelings. Teach you that you don't need to cover it up. You know, you don't need to cover up how you feel. If you feel that way, you feel that way. That's why you have to be honest with people. It's like, are you, when you're upset about something, say you're upset about, I'm upset about this. Well, that's because no, I'm upset about this, and I'm gonna be upset about this. But if you give me time, I'll get away from it. But I need time to move forward, because I was never like I said, I never could understand how I really felt about anything, because those were taken away from me growing up. Our area, you were told how you feel. You were told what you had to do. We didn't understand what real love really was. We didn't know what people were. We didn't understand how to walk away from a situation. Now I know how to walk away from a situation, and I give warnings. It's like, the thing that we had happen at the house with some person. I give warnings first. Hey, this is going to create this, So the reason why I don't feel bad about when something happens after I've given 10 warnings or 4 warnings and showed you who I am, by doing that, that's on you. And then I don't feel bad about it, because then that would be shame on me. See, some people do things and they have shame. Like people yell and they scream and then they have shame behind that. You have to learn that if you give them fair warning, you don't have to carry shame behind the yelling, because they knew that was coming, but they just kept pushing. And then finally you had to get mad, and then they wonder, well, why are you mad? Because you kept pushing.
Right.
And when I got mad, now you want to be sad.
You let them know where the boundary line was and what would happen if it crossed it.
Yes.
So this has been a really good discussion. I can't wait to get some more of the people that we work with in our Society for Evidence-Based Addiction Treatment on as guests. There's several people in particular. One I'm thinking of right now that taught us about how the brain changes when you are addicted, especially when you're talking about chemicals like drug use.
Because they did not find it that it was a disease. And like today, getting sober today, people applaud you. When I got sober, you were scourge of the earth. You were a horrible person.
The stigma is really powerful.
But now it's, oh man, you guys get in recovery? Oh,
it is better now. I still think there is a long way to go in recognizing that people that are in recovery are like all over, all among us. Like we were just talking about, there's a lot of us that face these struggles.
Yeah.
And we're not quote unquote like that picture of an addict that people have in their minds. No. And I want to talk for a quick minute about the idea that addiction does literally alter the structure of your brain, especially when you're dealing with drug or alcohol addiction. It changes.
But I think buying too. When you buy something, that thing clicks in your brain. I think when you buy too much, it clicks and gives you that endorphins. Yes, you want to feel more of it.
That's what I was learning about. When I was studying addiction more in the I've studied probably off and on over the last 20 years so much, just because of just my own struggles, and then my husband's struggle, my ex-husband's struggles, and then just the struggles of people around me. I think it's a widespread disease that I think honestly at some level we all have this tendency, this ability to go kind of compulsively in a direction. Anyway, so it was really interesting that what I was finding is some of these things like the shopping or like the pornography, it is still a drug, a chemical addiction. It's just the chemicals being produced by your own brain.
That's right.
It's a hormone or an endorphin that is being produced in your own brain.
That's right.
And that was really like such a huge discovery to me. When I learned that, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense, that it really is so similar in that we're forcing these chemicals to be produced, and then we become addicted to that chemical and want more of it. Yeah. So we have to repeat that behavior, that activity that created that release of chemical. And I think that one of the books that I was reading was talking about the pornography. It was saying that the cocktail of endorphins and hormones that gets released when, especially someone who's in a society where pornography is shameful, that cocktail that gets released in their brain is more powerful than any of the addictive drugs that people get addicted to.
Yeah, I can believe that.
So I think that's a really fascinating. There's also, they've proven there's a genetic component to addiction, that 40 to 60% of people have vulnerability to an addiction. Well, I wonder how they measure that.
Well, I will tell you this. I've seen people do a line of cocaine and go, ooh, that's way too strong. I don't want to do that anymore. And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? I can't believe, how could you walk away and go to sleep? It's like, yeah, you know what I mean? or people, and so that is the weirdest thing to watch people be able to do that. But that's when you realize they don't have that addiction quality inside of them. It's not a disease for them. And sometimes a disease of addiction, or even the disease period of any kind of addiction, it hides inside of you and it's waiting. People that are in recovery say that all the time, that you can never go back. If you go back, your disease has been doing push-ups. So my disease has been doing push-ups for 31 years. 31 years. So if I go back, it's got me. It's going to be too hard to come back. So you just stay within the program, stay within yourself, stay believing what you're doing is right, and
you're about to come up on your 32 years, actually.
Yes, on my 32 years soon. That's why understanding, what I tell people is understanding that the drug was not the problem. You were the problem. When you understand that, you can heal yourself and move on. See, that's what I knew, that the drug wasn't the problem. The drug was the symptom. The drug for me was the fix.
Yeah.
The problem was me emotionally dealing with my emotions and feelings and moving past those and knowing how to understand them. So now that I'm way away from it, I'm very understanding of how I feel. When I feel something, I know it's only temporary. It's not going to last. It's not going to stay with me and, all day. I know it's going to move forward. And that's why I tell people, who are even thinking about harming themselves, if you just give someone a chance, and give us one day, you may feel different the next day, and most likely you will feel different the next day.
Yeah.
And that's what we tell people that helps us move forward. It's like I tell people, don't call me if you've already used. Call me when you're off of it. Because if you already used, it's too late. I can't help you. But if you call me after, after, yeah, it's too late. If you call me before, I can help you not do it.
Yeah, help keep. So that was actually my next question was, can someone truly recover from addiction?
Oh, well, what they say is, do you truly recover? I don't think anyone recovers from anything, but can you truly get better? Yes. Can you stop using? Yes. Can you stop harming your life? Yes. Recovery is going to be on how long you stay sober.
Yeah, so I like that about it, where the idea being that, yes, can you recover? Can you get your life back? Is there a light at the end of this tunnel?
Yes.
where life not only gets as good as it was, but could get better,
Yes,
right?
it is.
Yes, absolutely. But I like that recovery is like an action word, that it's not a destination. It's an action. It's something that you're carrying with you, that you're going to always be aware of.
Yeah.
That this is something that I, like it's like my daughter broke her ankle when she was 17. It was a terrible break. She ended up having 3 surgeries that year. There was a lot of work that had to be done. And I remember being really heartbroken that her ankle was never going to be the same. Like it affects her ability to walk in high heels, which is kind of sad. She's had to work on her physical therapist. We literally were taking high heeled shoes to the physical therapist office because we're like, help us get to where she can walk better in high heels. Okay. So this is a lasting change that she's going to have for her whole life.
Yeah.
And as sad, we can sit here and be sad about it, but we're not. We're going to move on from it. But it's there. She's got the scars to prove it. Yeah. And that's going to stick with her. And it's the same way. When you're in recovery, you have these scars that you know this about yourself. And in some ways, you're empowered because you know this about yourself. You can help others that have these same sort of issues. And you know what you have to do and where you start to get vulnerable, right?
But also the thing is that people like me that are in recovery for as long as I've been, the people behind me, the media won't let me ever forget about it.
I know, it's sad.
They're the ones that will, you could be, no matter, they don't ask Robert Downey Jr. these questions. They don't ask Charlie Sheen these questions. And I have more time than both of them. And the sad part about it is they'll just keep asking people, asking me like I'm still involved in that. The media makes it seem like I'm still doing it. And it's like, I've been off of that for 31 years. You just keep. So what I had to learn to do was not care what they think anymore, to know only the people that know me, my people around me. They know who I am. They know what I'm doing. And that's all that's good enough for me. I don't need to care about what they think.
Okay, let's wrap things up by talking about what people can do to help either themselves or somebody they love.
First of all, if you know someone who's addicted to something and you want to help them, reach out and call someone who can help you to help them. Because I don't think that an ordinary person who doesn't have an understanding of it can really help. It's going to take someone who understands it. So you reach out, you call the 800 numbers that are all over the internet for different types of addiction, and find a way to get someone to talk to them. And now the thing about it is, though, most people aren't going to be receptive of you trying to help them in the beginning.
Yeah.
They have to realize for themselves that it is a problem to want to get help. You can't, this is a disease of wanting it. You have to want it. And they always say that the richest guy and the smartest guy has the most trouble in the world because he's
Getting
thinking,
sober, yeah.
because he thinks he can fix it.
Yeah.
It's like the old thing where you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, and that's not going to happen. You know, I had to become stupid to the program to be able to get through the program.
Yeah.
And trust it.
The word surrender is one you hear a lot when you're talking about
who likes to surrender?
Recovery. Right.
Nobody likes to surrender.
Right.
It's like you're in a battle, you're fighting. Do you surrender, you know, or do you keep fighting? The bottom line is you have to fight it just like that. No surrender, no surrender. You cannot surrender. You got to fight forward, and then when you get beat down long enough, you'll go, I quit. And then you surrender. And then you say, I'm going to do whatever. I came to the problem 31 years ago. I'm going to do whatever the program tells me to do. I'm not going to fight it anymore. I'm going to do what it needs me to do. And then I realized that it was the easiest program to get if I just surrendered in the beginning. And I didn't wait.
I know. Isn't that funny when it finally clicks? And I actually think that I read the Matthew Perry autobiography recently.
Man,
and I think his is a classic example of like what you were talking about, where somebody who has the resources to further the addiction, it is really hard to overcome it.
He had people around him that weren't trying to help him.
And that were enabling,
they were enabling him to continue with his addiction.
And in some ways, like as you're watching it unfold with like the charges that have been brought, people not only enabling him, but actually encouraging and fostering it.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
They were making money off him and they didn't care about his health or him.
Well, and actually the addiction treatment industry as well has a lot it that's some part of what we're trying to fight against with our Society for Evidence-Based Addiction Treatment. Yeah. And actually we're working towards, it's still in pre-beta. I don't even call it beta yet, but we're developing a tool called mybestrehab.org that's going to be able to help people find treatment facilities that are good.
Yes.
And we're working on that. Right now it's still in development.
And that are like
we'll keep you updated.
That are perfect for you. That's what we're doing.
Right. It's matching based on kind of your situation. This is our goal. It's kind of an idea that we hatched last year, and we're working to bring it to life. So we'll keep you updated here on Dang about the progress of that.
Yes.
So,
well, I think we had a very good show today. That was good.
I know.
Very informative, and we'll have some soon. You know, we'll have some guests on that can talk about it and further and educate us on more people that are working in programs. I was lucky enough to where I worked as a counselor in it. I worked as chemical dependency tech in it. So I know a lot about it. And
you spent a lot I don't think people realize that about you either, that after you got into recovery, you ran sober living houses.
I ran sober living houses for 4 years.
And then you worked with the LA courts.
I worked with Santa Monica courts I used to get people from them, talk to them. And, you know, one of the judges were like, if Todd can't fix him, nobody can. Because people thought that I was going to be, you know, let them slide too. And some people I had to race to beat the court to give the paperwork to the district attorney and the judge. And, you know, and then this one lady tried to accuse me of not doing anything for her son. And because you had to chart everything. And the judge is like, you know, ma'am, I'm sitting here and I'm reading all this charting he did. He tried to help your son. Your son just didn't want any help. And because I know he did everything he could to help your son, I'm going to send your son to jail. And that's what he did. So, and I knew what that felt like because I was in that position too. You know, the judge told me, I remember when I first he told me, and we can end on that one, he told me, Mr. Bridges, if you don't get sober, 6 years, that's what I'm going to give you. And I was like, okay, I got to get this right. And I knew at that point it was time for me to get the program together. But it was also a time for me to listen. And that's the key to everything. If we just would listen more to people, listen more to things, we can change not only our lives, but other people's lives. The problem is people don't listen before and then it's too late. You know, and I think with us, I think that even a husband and wife have to listen to each other. If you listen to each other and you hear the cues from each other, then you help each other a lot more.
Wow. All right. Well, this was awesome. I hope you guys learned a lot. I know we're not experts, but we're going to get those experts on here.
I'm an expert with addiction because I'm in recovery.
Well, sometimes you learn the best from people that are just a few steps in front of you rather than these, you know, the experts. But there are a few that came to mind.
Some of the experts
from SEAT that I want to call on.
I've had the most trouble getting advice and getting help from people who don't have any problem in the program, who like just come in, they teach and they counsel. It's tougher that way because they don't get what it's like to be in it.
Right.
Yeah. And so for me, that's what I've always needed, people who are in it, who can help me find a way out. So
You think it's time for us to finally do your jail episode?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No.
All right. That's going to be a good one.
I wasn't in jail. Yeah, I was.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for joining us on Dang. I'm Todd Bridges. This is my wife, Bettijo Bridges. Thank you so much. We'll see you then next time on Dang.
Dang.
This podcast is produced by my wife, Bettijo Bridges, in collaboration with Pop Populi, and edited by our daughter, Adelie Ann.
She is also the musician responsible for our theme music, so go check out Adelie Ann wherever you stream your music. Have a question or topic you want us to cover? Send us your suggestions at dangpodcast.com.
If you would do me a quick favor, please subscribe or rate our podcast to make it easier for others to find. Have a great week.
I'm running on nothing but faith. There's things far too great that I want to accomplish.